Very good morning, students. So in my previous video I have explained you about water as a universal solvent, characteristics of solution, types of solution, etc. Today we are going to read about the solubility of water. So today's highlights are solubility of water, factors which affect the solubility of water, solubility curve, characteristics and uses of solubility curve, hydrated and anhydrated substances, soft water and hard water. First, let me explain you what is solubility and what factors are affecting the solubility of solid. The solubility of a solid in a given solvent is defined as the number of grams of the solute required to saturate 100 gram of the solvent at a particular temperature. Last video I have explained you about what is solute and what is solvent. The substance which dissolve any solid in it is called solvent, and the solid which dissolve in a solvent is called solute. So solubility can be defined as how much amount of solute will be required to saturate any solvent. Saturate means that particular amount of solute will be dissolved in that solvent at a particular temperature, and after that no more solute can be dissolved in it. So that saturator, when that saturation point which will reach, that amount will be called as the solubility of the solid, that this much solid can be dissolved in 100 gram of solvent. Now the factors that affect solubility of solid in a solvent are nature of the solute and the solvent, temperature and pressure. So first, nature of the solute and solvent. Polar solvents can generally dissolve solute that are ionic, whereas non-polar substances will dissolve in non-polar solvent. Now what are this polar solvent and non-polar, polar solute and non-polar solvent? So the polar solvents are those solvents which contain partial charges and slightly which has plus charges as well as minus charges also, but the that angle of their composition is same. So these are polar solvent, and non-polar solvent are equal, having equal dipole moment. So nature of the solute and the solvent both is a factor which affect the solubility of the solvent. Then temperature. Solubility changes with the temperature of the substance. If there is increase in the temperature of the solution, it increases the solubility of solid. As I explained you in supersaturated solution, if we want to add more amount of solute in any solid, in any solvent, then we have to increase its temperature. So by increasing the temperature, the solubility of the substance will also increase. Third is pressure. The solubility of solid and liquid, or we can say liquid in liquid, will not change with the change in pressure if there is any significant change in pressure. But because why it is so? Because the solid and liquid are highly incompressible and remain unaffected by changes in pressure. So this is all about solubility. Now there is one more term, dissolution. So the dissolution is the rate at which the solute dissolve in a substance, or we can say that the speed with which a substance dissolve in a solvent, the rate at which the substance dissolve in a solvent, that is called dissolution of the solute. Now there are some factors which affects the dissolution of solute and That factors are particle size, stirring, amount of solute already dissolved, and temperature. Obviously, particle size will affect dissolution. If there are finer particles, it will dissolve more frequently, and if the particles are core and big in size, then they will dissolve little bit slowly. Then stirring, it also causes any solute to dissolve very frequently in solvent. Amount of solute already dissolved. If in a solution, in a solvent, if there is already some amount of solute is dissolved in that, then the more of amount of solute will take time to dissolve in it. And then fourth is temperature. So if there is increase in temperature, again the rate of dissolution will also increase. So this is all about the solubility and factors affecting the solubility of solid. Now next is solubility curve. Solubility curve is a graphical representation, or we can say a graph, which shows the relationship between the solubility and temperature. The relationship between solubility and temperature, as you can see here in the picture, one graph is there. On the x-axis the temperature is shown, and on the y-axis the solubility of any substance per 100 gram is shown. You can see here, this is temperature on x-axis and this is the solubility given on y-axis. So the relationship between the solubility and temperature can be plotted on solubility temperature curve, and this curve is known as the solubility curve. Now, what is the work of solubility curve? The solubility curve shows us the variation of solubility with temperature. The solubility curves of substances like potassium nitrate and lead nitrate show a considerable increase in the solubilities with increase in temperature. As you can see here, potassium nitrate and lead nitrate. So here potassium nitrate, with the increase in temperature, the solubility is increasing. As you can see, when the temperature is on 10, it is 40, then it is gradually increasing and the slope is increasing. Same with the potassium nitrate also. When the temperature is 0, that solubility is 20. Then when it is increased, the curve is also going up. So this is potassium nitrate and this is lead nitrate. Now, sodium chloride shows a minimal increase in solubility with increase in temperature. Here you can see, this is the sodium chloride curve and this is showing less solubility. Okay, so here we can see that the solubility of sodium chloride is showing very minimal change with the increase in temperature. It means its solubility will not be affected by the increase in temperature. Then the solubility curves of substances like calcium sulfate, slag lime increases with the increase in temperature and then decreases after attaining maximum value at a particular temperature. Now you can see here that calcium sulfate, this one. So first its solubility is increasing with the temperature, and after attaining a certain point, again it is getting decreased with the temperature. Now next is sodium sulfate, shows a sharp increase in solubility till the temperature reaches 32.8 degrees Celsius. If the solution is heated beyond this temperature, the solubility decreases. You can see the curve of sodium sulfate. Here it is showing the increase in temperature and then suddenly after 32.8 it is decreasing. Why this is so? This is because Na2SO4 10H2O, that is called as Glauber salt, is hydrous below 32.8 degrees Celsius and anhydrous above this temperature. So this is the case of anomalous solubility. You have read about the anomalous expansion of water, so it is also called anomalous solubility. Now what is hydrous and anhydrous substance? I am going to explain you about this characteristics and uses of solubility curve. After that I will explain you about hydrous and anhydrous substance. Now what are the characteristics of solubility curve? The curve plots the changes of the solubility of the solid at different temperature in solvent, as we have already seen in the diagram, that it is showing us the solubility, that how it is increasing with the temperature about the different compounds. Then second, the variation in temperature are plotted on x-axis as I shown you, and the solubility is plotted on the y-axis. Now uses of solubility curve. What are the uses of solubility curve? It helps compare the solubility of different solutes at any given temperature. The knowledge of solubility curves of different substances adds in fractional crystallization. A discontinuity in the solubility curve indicates that two different substances are involved, and the solubility of a solute can be determined at a particular temperature with the help of the curve. So this is all about the characteristics of solubility curve and uses of solubility curve. Now next is hydrated and anhydrous salts. So a crystalline salt or a substance, we can say, that contains the definite number of water molecule is called a hydrated salt or hydrated substance. Each formula unit in the hydrated substance has a specific number of water molecules attached to it. For example, CuSO4 5H2O, Na2CO3 10H2O. Now here you can see that specific number of water molecules, that is this 5H2O 10H2O. Here this specific number of water molecules are attached with this salt. So when this specific number of water molecules are attached to any substance or any salt, that substance or salt is called hydrated substance, or we can say hydrated salts. The dot in the formula indicates that water molecules are bonded directly to each formula unit. It means that 5H2O are directly combined with Cu, then with sulfur, then with oxygen. Like it is CuSO4, then this 5H2O will be directly combined to the each unit of the formula. The water molecules that form part of the structure of crystallized substance are called water of crystallization. So this definition is not given here. I am just telling you to increase your knowledge. Now some examples of crystal hydrates are given in this table, or we can say salt hydrate. You can see here are the formulas. Now you can see that in all the formulas the specific number of water molecules are attached, like 6H2O, 5H2O, 7H2O, 7H2O, 10H2O, etc. So all these are the hydrated substance and they have the specific numbers of water molecules attached with them, like cobalt chloride hexahydrate, copper sulfate pentahydrate, iron sulfate pentahydrate, heptahydrate. So here you can see their prefix is according to their number of water molecules attached with that. Now what are anhydrous substances? So when hydrated substances are heated at a temperature above 100 degrees Celsius, they lose their water of crystallization. And when the crystalline substances loses its water of crystallization, it becomes amorphous, and the substance which have lost their water of crystallization are called as anhydrous salt or anhydrous substance. So simply we can say that the salt without water of crystallization is called anhydrous salt. Like from this CuSO4 5H2O, when we heat it at 100 degrees Celsius and that 5H2O is removed from the hydrated substance, then that CuSO4 will become anhydrous. Similarly, if that 10H2O will be removed from Na2CO3, then that Na2CO3 will become anhydrous salt. So this is about hydrated and anhydrous salts. Now, efflorescence and deliquescence. Efflorescence, the phenomena is called efflorescence, in which the substance on exposure to air loses a part of their water of crystallization, or we can say the whole water of crystallization. Then that phenomenon is called efflorescence. Due to efflorescence, the substance loses its crystalline shape and crumbles into a powder. So in simple words, efflorescence is the loss of water of crystallization from the hydrated substance into atmosphere, so that an equilibrium is formed between the hydrated substance and the surrounding atmosphere. Now, the substances which exhibit efflorescence are called efflorescent substances, like washing soda, Gobler salt, and blue vitriol, that is CuSO4 5H2O, which example was there in the previous slide. So not all substances will show the property of efflorescence and can be called as efflorescent substance. Only some are there which on to the exposure to air. Like in anhydrous substance, what we are doing, we are boiling it for 100 degrees Celsius, and after that their water of crystallization will be removed. But some substances are there which only on the exposure to the air loses some part of the water of crystallization or whole water of crystallization, and that this property is called efflorescence, and the substance which have this property are called efflorescent substances. Now, efflorescence occurs when vapor pressure in the hydrated substance is more than the atmospheric pressure. Now, next property is deliquescence. Now, some water-soluble substances, when exposed to air, absorb sufficient moisture from the air to completely dissolve in it and form a saturated solution. So, these substances are said to be deliquescent, and the property is called deliquescence. Now, what is happening in deliquescence? It is just a reverse of efflorescence. If a hydrated substance has lower vapor pressure, we have said that in efflorescence the substance will have the vapor pressure more than the atmospheric pressure. So in deliquescence, if the vapor pressure is lower than the surrounding atmosphere, then the water molecules transfer from the atmosphere to the less hydrated substance to make them more hydrated and to produce an equilibrium. And this phenomenon is called deliquescence. Now, the efflorescence occurs when the vapor pressure is more than the atmospheric pressure, and deliquescence occurs when the vapor pressure is less than the atmospheric pressure. Next is hygroscopic salt or substances or drying and dehydrating agents. So only definitions you have to learn for that. That this is a phenomenon in which a substance absorbs moisture water from the atmosphere when exposed and does not turn into solution. That substances are called hygroscopic substances. Like at the ordinary temperature only, they absorb moisture from the atmosphere and they do not dissolve in it. So such substances are called hygroscopic substances. Examples are sodium trioxonitrate, potassium trioxonitrate, sulfuric acid. So hygroscopic substances are commonly employed as drying agents or desiccants. Now, drying and dehydrating agents are substances which can readily absorb moisture from the substances without reacting chemically with them are drying agents. There is just a slight difference in between hygroscopic or drying agents. Hygroscopic substances are also commonly called as drying agents or desiccants. Now, hygroscopic substance absorb moisture from atmosphere when it is exposed to the atmosphere, but drying agents or desiccants, they are already have the property to absorb moisture without, even if we are exposing them to atmosphere or not, they will absorb the moisture from the surroundings. So you have seen that silica gel pouches in your, if you are buying any new water bottle, that pouches are there, kept there in that. So that is for absorbing the moisture, or to stop that moisture to develop into the water bottle or any other thing. So that is desiccant, that is drying agent. So this is just a slight, there is just a slight difference between hygroscopic salt and drying agent or desiccant. Both absorb moisture, but in hygroscopic salt, they absorb moisture from the surrounding when it is exposed to the atmosphere, but in drying agents they will absorb it readily. So this is all about the salts and substances. Now next is hard water and soft water. I don't have to give you a detailed description of about soft and hard water, I think, because you are reading it since class 6. So all of us know that natural water contains dissolved salt in it, and the water which forms leather easily with the soap, it is called as soft water, because it has less amount of dissolved salt in it, and the water which do not form leather easily with soap is termed as hard water. So here is a comparison between hard water and soft water. That hard water react with soap to form scum, so you need more soap to form leather, and soft water soap forms leather very easily and readily. Hard water contains dissolved compounds of calcium and magnesium from rocks, and soft water not as good for you, as no calcium present, which is good for bones and teeth. So this is one benefit of hard water, that it contains the dissolved salts of calcium and magnesium, which are very good for our bones and which are very good for our teeth. But in soft water it is not so much good for our health, but it is good for washing clothes and washing utensils, because it forms leather easily with the soap. Now in hard water the compounds have dissolved as water meets rocks, and in soft water is cheaper than hard water, because in the soft water the less soap is needed to us, and no lime scale or damage to appliances. Like when we use hard water, we can see that at some time the water forms a white scum or white scale at the water, at the utensils, or at the we can say at the utensils or at any surface. So this is the disadvantage of hard water because of the dissolved salt in it. So this is the comparison between soft water and hard water. Now some disadvantages and advantages of soft water and hard water are also given in your book, so read it from there. Now causes and removal of hardness of water. Like some disadvantages of hard water are also there, that hard water forms scum or precipitate with soap, and that is it is unsuitable for laundry, and it is harmful for boilers because it causes the deposition of salt in the form of scale on the inner surface of the boiler. So first let me tell you what are the causes of hardness of water. So simply the hardness of water is due to the presence of hydrogen carbonate, chlorides, and sulfate of calcium and magnesium, and this salt get dissolved in water as it flows on the surface of the earth. Now there are two types of hardness of water: temporary hardness of water and permanent hardness of water. And temporary hardness of water is due to the presence of soluble hydrocarbonates of calcium and magnesium, which are soluble, and that's why it is called temporary hardness, because it can simply be removed by boiling. And permanent hardness of water is due to the presence of soluble chlorides and sulfates of calcium and magnesium in it. And this type of hardness is called permanent hardness because it cannot be removed simply by boiling the hard water. Now, types of hardness of water. Here are two methods for removal of hardness of water. First is removal of permanent hardness of water. So, as I told you before that the permanent hardness of water cannot be easily removed by boiling only. So, if we want to remove the permanent hardness of water, that hardness can be removed by treating that water with washing soda. Washing soda reacts with soluble calcium and magnesium chloride and sulfates in hard water to form insoluble carbonates which get precipitated. As you can see in the reaction, that calcium chloride react with Na2CO3 and forms CaCO3, that is, the dissolved salts become insoluble and sodium chloride will be separated. So in this way, this dissolved salts can be separated from the water. And after that, the magnesium salt, this is about the salts of calcium, particles of calcium which are soluble in water, dissolved in water. Then magnesium, that is magnesium sulfate, MgSO4 plus Na2CO3, when its particle react, when the particles of soluble magnesium react with the washing soda, they form the insoluble carbonate which get precipitated and become insoluble in water and remove the hardness of water. Then the removal of the temporary hardness of water. Temporary hardness of water can first be removed simply by boiling it. When we start boiling, the soluble salts of calcium and magnesium attached with the water and they become insoluble. Then one more method is there, that is SLAC method or calcium hydroxide method, in which the dissolved salt react with calcium hydroxide and become insoluble. As you can see here in the reaction, CaHCO3 whole twice, when react with calcium hydroxide, it forms CaCO3 which is insoluble and pure water is obtained. Same with the salt of magnesium, MgSCO3 whole twice, when it is react with the calcium hydroxide, again it forms the dissolved salts of and again it forms the precipitate of CaCO3 and MgOH whole twice, which will be insoluble, and the pure salt will be separated from there, and this can be separated easily by the method of filtration. So after boiling it, we can filter it. In filtering, this dissolved and this insoluble salts can be separated and we can obtain a pure water from which the hardness is removed. So this is all about your third chapter. So today we have finished our third chapter. In next video I'll explain you the fourth chapter, that is atomic structure and chemical bonding. Thank you.